Hey folks, and welcome to another video from A Plain Truth for You. Hey, I want to get into the wonderful, marvelous, amazing work of Martin Kenny and his website's Flat Earth Universe, because he brings a very, very high-level conversation that ties directly in with the ancient mythology, the ancients who built pyramids we still can't figure out, the ancients who revered Father Sky and Mother Earth, who told of the spinning of the cycle of the heavens, and they told of the many universes of multiple verses. And this gets back into these different races that Mr. Kenny talks about, the Arya race, the Atlantis race, the Lemurians, and the Hyperboreans, the Chaldeans, and we'll get all into that in a minute. But to give you a little historical perspective here, folks, the Vedics, one of the ancient language of the Vedics, the India, they talked about having the ages of the Yuga cycle, they called it, and we're just leaving down here the Kali Yuga. Plato called it the Great Year. He took it from the Vedics, and the Great Year was 25,920 years. 25,920 years is what it took to go through the Gold Age, down to the Silver Age, losing knowledge, losing light, down to the dense form of Bronze, down to the densest form of the Iron Age. What did we just leave 500 years ago? The Dark Ages, ascending towards the light, the Dwapara Age. In the Bronze Age, back up to Treta Yuga, the Silver, and then into Satya Yuga. Remember, see, the Golden Age is much greater time period than these smaller time periods here. So we're talking about a much, much bigger time frame of time that the ancients talked about, and the Indians, the Vedics, still describe as a reality. And here you can see, let me pull this up a little bit, the chart of the yugas. This is by Sri Yuksaswar, restored the ancient yoga system in 1894. And you can see here the Kali Yuga, which we're just leaving now, into the present, the Dwapara, leaving the age of Pisces. Why do all the Christians have fish on their car? Because it's the age of Pisces. And what about before that? Aries, the age of the Lamb. And what do we see on the pyramids? The great bull. Every one of these 12 signs of the zodiac are 2,160 years. 2,160 years gets the great Yuga cycle of 25,920 years. So you can see where we're heading back towards the light. It's the end of darkness. And this is why I speak about it being the end of darkness and the dawn of the light. Even though the light's not warming it up, even though we can't see clearly, we can clearly see the light of day as darkness ends, as dark as it has been for a very long time in our time frame. But if we look at other great time frames, there's an old saying, as above, so below. And I just put this together. A great year is 25,920 years. That's the time it takes for all 12 signs to go through the entire zodiac cycle of 2,160 years. They've been broken down into four ages, as I spoke about. Now, let's take that down from as above to the so below, which is humanity. The average human takes about 18 breaths per minute. You multiply 18 breaths per minute times 60 minutes to see how many breaths you take in an hour, and you get 1,080 breaths per hour, which is 1/2 exactly of a zodiac year, or zodiac being in the zodiac sign of 2,160. 2,160 divided by 2 is 1,080 breaths per hour. Multiply 1,080 breaths per hour times 24 hours, and you get 25,920 breaths taken per day, the exact same number as the Vedic Yuga cycles and Plato's Great Year. As above, so below is also a teaching of the ages. All right, let's pull your heads up even further and look further on the horizon of his story, or let's call it her story, because it's a much bigger story of creation. The life of Brahma, 311 trillion, 40 billion years is one life of Brahma, of one universe, of multiple verses. This is how big the story of us really is. This is the ancient wisdom. That has been there, but we just never learned or heard about it. And here you can see down here in the Diva Yuga cycles down here, you see a Kalpa, with the creation of a Kalpa, a great day, a great year. And down here we have the Sata Yuga, the Treta Yuga, the Dwapara Yuga, the Kali Yuga. Here's a cycle here. And then that cycle is 4.32 million years of 4 Yuga cycles. And it bumps up to 71 Diva Yogas. And then up here into 4.32 billion years. So here the ancient Vedics have broken down the onion into the layers of our one creation, one universe of multiple verses. It's important to keep this in mind when we get into Mr. Kenny's work right now. So let's go back to this model Mr. Kenny put together here. And here we see Earth, Atlantis, Mount Meru. This is the Earth plane. You have the sun and the moon. And the Aryan race that they said Hitler talked about really was Himmler. And wouldn't you know, the name Paradise is at the center. Mr. Kenny, I'm not sure if he still is talking about it, but there may be another portal opening up for another root race being created as early as this year. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that there might be major upheavals to create another root race. But here's the 4 root races he speaks about. So the Hyperboreans on the far outside, the first root race, was the Polarians, the Hyperboreans, the Lemurians, and the Orions. And here you see Earth Atlantis. And this is why Dubé called his book Atlantis Conspiracy. Stars of the heavens, Polaris never changes. That's where they tell you the heavens are, the gods are. If you want to know where heaven is, you just look up above and you see the 2 luminaries. You see Uranus and Neptune rotating around the stars of the heavens. And also notice this. This is what's really important too. Notice the signs of the zodiac here. We've got Mars and we've got Venus. Those are the Lemurians' moon and sun. Okay? Saturn and Jupiter. Those are the Hyperboreans. Okay? When they're talking about, let me get another picture up here. Well, let's go to this first. Flat Earth and the 4 root races, according to Martin Kenny. And let me just read to you what he wrote, because it's really profound. And I've spoken with Martin several times, not recently though, and it's just his work. He did this work through a lot of deep research, a lot of reading, and also downloading, intuition. They were feeding this to him as he related it. So let me just read. According to some flat earth researchers like Martin Kenny, there are indeed more land rings beyond our known Earth. Up to 1 billion miles, folks, on the flat earth plane. This is when they talk about infinite plane. We're talking about billion miles going outward past the Antarctic Circle. Think about that as we discuss this further. But they descend in a pyramid-like fashion. In other words, they're a series of flat disks of different sizes, one on top of the other. Martin postulates 4 disks or rings, each with their own field or dome and set of luminaries, what heliocentrics call planets, or plane T, ET, extraterrestrial, extra land, ET, extra land, PT, plane terrestrial, plane land. You get it? They're playing games with us, folks, but they're telling us what's really going on. All right, going on. At the top, the smallest is the Araya, or Paradise, is the newest. Remember, they're claiming Paradise now as their dominion? Makes sense, doesn't it? And with Mount Meru and Polaris at the center, followed by Earth Atlantis, we have Lemuria and the Hyperboreans, these are the oldest, with a new ring created in the center every 24,000 years, or as I postulate, 25,920 years, part of the Yuga cycle. It makes perfect sense that black Africans were the first humans to be created, even if it was to serve the gods who created them. Maybe Stitchin's Anunnaki story is correct. Now, he's referring to this 13 volume series, and yes, Mr. Stitchin is a Freemason, but that doesn't mean it's not true. A lot of Freemasons, like Manly Hall and others, known Freemasons, release incredible amounts of important critical information. They're sharing the story. So is Stitchin's work bogus because he's a Freemason? Absolutely not. But that doesn't mean it's necessarily true. That's why we have to use discernment and judgment. They provide a lot of truth, 80 to 90% of truth, with the 10%, 12, 15% of bullshit. That's why you have to use discernment and judgment. All right, moving on. So Stitchin's Anunnaki story is correct that the gods who came to this egg universe, presumably from another egg universe, hundreds of thousands of years ago, tried to terraform this plane and shape it to their needs. But it was too much work, so they created blacks as primitive workers to relieve them of their toil. Now, this is the story of Michael Tellinger talking about down in Africa, in South Africa, where they have all these hundreds and thousands of circular stones, river rock, that have harmonic frequencies that can levitate and lift things. Then you have the hieroglyphics of the falcon head with the human body, the centurion, the horse with the human. This is also deals with our 15th chromosome. That is the missing DNA from us and animals. So did they genetically modify us? Did the Anunnaki, Enlil and Enki, did they genetically modify us, as Stitchin said back in those days, because they needed the gold to preserve their existence on their Earth that they were living on, and they came here, and then they put domes on top of us? That's Stitchin's story. It's a really fascinating read, and it goes back hundreds of thousands of years. But there really were, according to Stitchin and others, centurions. They were using them for slave labor. So this is what Mr. Kenny's talking about. So it was terraforming, by the way, that destroyed or greatly changed much of the natural biodiversity. What do you think they're doing with geoengineering? They're terraforming Earth. Are they terraforming Earth for the next root race to come out? It's definitely possible, folks. It's like a developer from the city who comes into a forest or jungle and cuts down the trees and clears the foliage and then builds roads and houses and whatever defines his civilization. Further interbreeding and genetic manipulation created the other root races and sub-races, and the process continues to this day. And the story goes is that they left, they got what they needed, they took their gold, and they went off on their ships, and they put a dome over us. And they left us with their legal system, with their financial system, with their government system they implemented into us. And then they took off, and they were all watching to see what would happen, like we're a big petri dish experiment with their systems in place. And this also has to do with the fall of the fall from heaven with the war in heavens with Michael back in the 1850s, 1860s, that, quote, the Bible talks about as well. All right, further interbreeding manipulation. The Hyperboreans or Black Saturn race was used to dig tunnels for supersonic tram systems for the gods. We've seen this all over. I've reported about all these underground massive tram systems running on maglevs, running on magnets. You can get from Washington, D.C. to California in just a few hours. The original black race was not only very strong physically, but very large or tall, and instilled with deep religious fear or fervor from their rulers. Most of them were settled into the African continent, which they still dominate today. Africa is not a country. It's over 40 countries in a continent, folks, just FYI. The next oldest root race, the Asian Lemurians or Orientals, have Venus and Mars as their luminaries, planets associated with both peace and war, and beauty and grossness, yin and yang. Their lighter skin color and hidden eyelids may be a product of the orangutan, which is native to the Southeast Asia, just as the darker African gorilla was used to produce the black race. Or they may actually be associated with the lemur primate, hence Lemurian. This yellow root race and their sub-races settled into China, Japan, and Southeast Asia. They were and are a highly spiritual and family-oriented peoples using crystals and nature as their technology. When Atlantis was birthed some 30,000 years ago, it pushed Lemuria outward and began its rise towards a scientific technical society quite opposite from the Lemurians. It even built vimanas or flying machines and became a very powerful force militarily. Now, what we're likely talking about is the Tartarians here. But infiltration by the dark forces, the Romanovs, led to its eventual demise. With the sun and the moon as their signature luminaries, they made full use of solar power, but also harnessed the negative influence of the moon, which is cold plasma, and resorted to black magic, both of which they used to eventually destroy them. They played with genetics and produced living monstrosities and deviated sexually. When the evil got out of their hand, it was decided to sink the land with a great flood. Their survivors produced our current civilization, which is now repeating the same makes and also faces destruction. And this is a very cool model to give you a better idea what we're talking about here. Planes, level planes extending outward, 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 and these are atmospheric domes. There isn't just one dome. These are energetic fields, folks. Okay, so again, we talk about in the Orion, Earth we're in now, the Aryan race, we have the sun and the moon. And then in the next outward, we have Venus and Mars, and then the dome, and then we have Jupiter and Saturn, and then the dome. So what I want to get into a little bit was that the toroidal fields they speak about and why they use the terms that we're spinning at 1,000 miles an hour on Earth. What they're talking about is the speed of the sun and the moon rotating energetically. They're also talking about the toroidal fields. When they're talking about the rotation of us around the sun, here's the sun here, and we're going around it. Well, they're talking about Venus and Mars. They're talking about the next root race out, okay? And this is the dome of Mars and Venus, and the aurora borealis, of the Lemurians, and then the Jupiter and Saturn is the Hyperboreans. So we have domes on domes on domes. Why is the sky blue? Why, if you take the ocean and you take the water and it's blue and you take it in a cup and it's clear? Because clearly the water in the ocean is not blue. The blue comes from the atmospheres, not atmosphere, atmospheres of all the different spheres that are over us, dome on dome on dome. So when they say we're spinning at 1,000 miles a second, or 66,000 miles an hour to go 533 million miles around the sun, they're talking about the rotation of Venus and Mars traveling energetically. When they talk about us going 600,000 miles around the solar system, around the Milky Way, they're talking energetically about how long it takes Jupiter and Saturn at the speeds they have to travel to complete one of their cycles around the Hyperboreans dome and ages out there. So you have realms on realms on realms. And you can see all the different cultures talked about the flood myth. It wasn't just Noah. It's Incas, Aztecs, Norse, Euro, Greeks, Judaism, Babylonian, Hindu, Chinese, Egyptians, Sumerians, Aborigines. All of them spoke about the origins of the flood. Cannot be just by coincidence. So I wanted to go through this with you. This is what Martin Kenney draws as the flat Earth plane being 1 billion miles out until you get to Loca Mountain on the extreme perimeter of this one universe. So just quickly, the Loca Mountains is the land of all pure gold beyond the ocean of pure water, space equal to the distance between Mount Meru and Manasatara. The land is like a mirror. There are no beings here. The reason is any substance placed on it would be once converted into gold, and nothing can be obtained. The rays of the sun, the polar star, and all the luminaries are confined to this sphere rather than passing through its middle. The luminaries shed their luster on the 3 locas. And that is on the outer perimeter of this one universe creation of God's creation. And again, the Mantavara Pralaya is 311 trillion 40 billion years. So when God breathes in a creation, he creates by breathing out. And then breathing back in is the dissolution. So we're right at the exact stage. The Christ event marked the end of halfway of 311 trillion 40 billion years. That's why the Christ event was so significant. It marked the extreme turning point between the creation and the dissolution. And now we're in the dissolution, and that's what the Mayan calendar talked about, December 21st, 2012, the end of Maya, illusion. Maya means illusion, disillusion. And look at how much more information we have learned since 2012. This is the Great Awakening. And this may likely be our entire creation here of a much, much, much bigger story than just life here on Earth during this one generation of one lifetime in a human. And we see in the ancients, in the Vedics, in the Chinese, in the Native Americans, the Toltecs, the Mayans, the Aztecs, they all had similar stories. And this is also why the church does not want these other stories of reincarnation to come out, to think that we're coming back again. They want us to think we're one and done, and that you better do your penance now or you're going to hell, because this and that and the other thing. I mean, give me a break. The story of us is a much, 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 much greater story than what you're hearing in, quote, the King James Freemason, the Freemason Bible. Anyway, so this is another brilliant chart that Martin Kenny came up with. Shows the yin and the yang, the sun and the moon creation event going on here. And he made it out over a vast period of time to the meridian midnight quarter. He brought brought the signs in, and then he broke it down, which I found extremely fascinating as well, that he gets into where we are at this exact moment in time between a transition from the Iron Age, the most dense of all ages, the darkest of all ages. Go back and try and read Plato. Go back and try and read some of the ancient languages. You can't understand a word they're freaking saying. They were much more advanced. They had magnetricity. They had levitation. They had flying machines, Vinamasas, which I'm going to show you in a second here. But this 2020 is a big, huge turning point in the wheel of a very big wheel cycle. And this is why Mr. Kenny and others thinks that Mount Meru at the Mount Eden, at the top of the North Pole, the magnetized North Pole, the feminine divine, Isis, the creation principle, nurture nature, is going to be birthing another root race beginning this year. This is why there will be turmoil. This is why there will be upheaval. This is likely why the Halden Collider in Switzerland and other places around the world are being created to stop this other root race from emanating. And this is why they want to bring the coronavirus and others to make it hell on earth, so our souls will never, ever come back here again. And the evil doers, as George Bush called them, will have dominion over earth. That's the Luciferian and the satanic plan, to have dominion over earth and to keep our souls from reincarnating. And again, if anybody looks into just history at all, you can see all these ancient mythological, real stories, legends, all had geocentric earth. That we were the center of the creation with a dome above us. The Mayans, the Incans, the Hebrews, Australians, the Chinese, the Celtics, Islamics, even the Masonics show us. The Romans show us. The Egyptians show us. The only ones that don't is NASA, not a space agency, but a member of the Department of Offense. And some of you remember a couple years ago when we saw these objects in the sky over Los Angeles, a slow-moving object, and again, one in Florida as well. And what do we see here? The same exact thing depicted back in the ancient Vedic teachings of their writings and their drawings. The Vinamasa, the flying machines. This is not just by happenstance or coincidence. This is all part of a much bigger plan they call the Grand Design. And the Grand Design can be seen and can be known for those with eyes to see and ears to hear. But clearly, they are reconnecting to our ancient past. And as many of you know, we've seen some extremely weird things going on in the skies with sun simulators, moons being not where they're supposed to be, major league geoengineering events, but also up in the great north, we're seeing the Hyperborean, the Hyperborealis, affecting some very strange patterns now. Now, is this patterns of a new birthing, as Mr. Kenny postulates? I mean, these pictures are like, if you were thinking of a creation, this would be a new Yardisol egg. This would be a new creation being formed. And this is right at the top, at the center of the flat earth, where we have Mount Meru, the tree of knowledge, the tree of good and evil, and all is situated right where this is all occurring. And right below the North Pole, the reason why the Big Dipper, which is a clock, The bucket points to the North Pole so we can always know where the gods in the heavens are. So this is Eden. This is Mount Meru. You're not allowed to go to the North Pole for a reason. You're not allowed to go to the Antarctic Circle for a reason. It's all protected. But in these ancient maps, we're seeing that the creations of the 4 great rivers and the 4 continents here, Russia, Europe, and then Greenland, Asia, and Canada, it dovetails perfectly with the ancient maps and ancient legends of the true story of our likely creation, which in ancient times was known as the 4-continent Earth, as can be seen from this image from 1967. And again, it ties in beautifully with the ancients, the Babylonian view of the cosmos and their 3-tiered universe. And many, many other descriptions of this Yardasol egg and being inside a placenta or a spheric energy dome as well. And you see the snake and the realms. We have 7 realms above, 7 realms below, 9 realms of consciousness. And Martin got so into this, man. He got all that went to the arts and crafts stores, and he created this beautiful model as he was trying to put together all the different realms of existence of what the ancients had taught and what he was being downloaded through intuition, through consciousness as well. I don't know where this model is, but hats off to him, man. This is awesome. And one of the ways they get us is by making us think that the material world is all there is. Those of us who are waking up understand a great spiritual war is going on. Esperare, to breathe, respire, perspire, expire, spirit. Spirit means breath, espiare, to breathe. It began with the breath, folks. It didn't begin with the word. Before the word, it was the lungs vibrating. Before the lungs vibrating was the thought of creation directing the lungs to express itself. At first, there was the mind. Before the mind was the heart. And that's where we're heading back to with the higher chakras as we ascend to the higher chakras through the solar plexus to the heart chakra, which opens up our other chakras of unity and love. This is where we're heading. Very exciting. And a lot of what Martin referring to is the ancient legends. Native Americans talked about this time period as being the 4th turning. Ancient other legends talked about this time period, like I was talking about the Mayan calendar and others. When the earth is ravaged and the animals are dying, a new tribe of people shall come onto the earth from many colors, classes, creeds, and who by their actions, thinking, feeling, doing, by their actions and deeds shall make the earth green again. They will be known as the warriors of the rainbow, all colors. What is white light? It is all colors of the rainbow. And you can say this is New Age mumbo jumbo, but that's another psyop that was created. You could say, oh, the colors of the rainbows, the LBGT and all that. That's another creation to get us from knowing where we're heading and what we're supposed to be doing now in waking up. When we awaken to the darkness. And what do we have to become? We have to go inward to find our light. And once we shine light into the darkness, it is no longer darkness. It's your shadow, folks. You need to own the darkness. Once you shine your light, it's not dark anymore. It can never be dark again. It's your shadow. And it was the Lakotas also who were teaching the warriors of the rainbow who would show the people that the Great Spirit is full of love and understanding and teach them how to make the earth beautiful again. Notice the paintbrush. Notice the colors of the rainbow. And notice the third eye is the light bearer. And karma means action. That's simply. It doesn't have a good, it's not good or it's not bad. It's just what is. It's the law of equilibrium, of balance. Every action will have its corresponding consequences. Do unto others as you would do unto yourself. That's what they're talking about, meaning the word karma. It operates on physical, emotion, mental, spiritual, mind, physical. The only decree of karma, an eternal and immutable decree, is absolute harmony in the world of matter as it is in the world of spirit. It is not therefore karma that rewards or punishes, but it is we who reward or punish ourselves according to whether we work with, through, and along with nature, abiding by the laws of nature, which that harmony depends, or we break them. And for all you as awakening truthers, the secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. What do you want to see? Yes, the world is horrible. Yes, the coronavirus is going to spread. Yes, they're geoengineering. Yes, they're going to vaccinate our children. Yes, it's a horrible world we're seeing when we wake up. But what do you want to see? What do you want? And then go out and fight for it. First they ignore you, then they ridicule you, then you fight, and then you win. Gandhi. The truth is like a lion. You don't have to defend it. Let it loose, and it'll defend itself. And remember, people can't unhear you. Speak your truth. We have to let our ego go and start building the echo cycle of life once again. We're not apart from, we're a part of the entire system. Try and live one day without a sun, without a moon, without an earth that all it gives its life. Try. Reverence is what's needed here, folks. Earth is under attack as well. We need to protect and preserve all life. All life is precious. Not just yours, not just mine. You're not just saving your own ass is not good enough, folks. It's not going to cut it in this experience. And what's so beautiful about the whole flat earth story is not only are we reconnecting to our ancient ancestors in synergy with their legends and their belief systems and their thoughts and their understandings, but we're also understanding that we're at the center of this one creation. That all the heavens, the stars, the luminaries, the moon, the sun, the sky, it's all rotating around us to help develop our higher consciousness. It's all set to help us to achieve greater control of who we are, where we came from, and why we're here. It's all centered around this. And the Romanovs, the Vaticans, etc., yada yada, Luciferians, the satanic principles, they don't want us to know who we are because we're too powerful for them, folks. We're on the light. They want it. They don't want us to ascend because when you ascend, we see them. We shine our light, and they go into the darkness, into the lower realms, into the dark realms, and they know they're heading there because they are the fallen angels. They are the ones that are heading down. These are the blue bloods. These are the copper lines. These are the ones that all the presidents have the same negative bloodlines. Just because you have a negative bloodline doesn't mean you're on the descension, anything but. It means that you have this purity of blood that is a descendant of a much higher consciousness. But we're on the ascension now. The ancient Nords talked about the 9 worlds, with Asgard being the home of Aesir, at the top, at the tree of life. And then you have the Midgard, the home of the humans, where we are here on this flat plane earth. And on the perimeters, we have the home of the fire giants and demons, and the home of the light elves. And then down in the hellish realms, we have the home of the dwarves, the home of Vanir, home of the giants, and the world of ice and fog, and the home of hell and the dishonor of the dead. And then you wonder where the term seventh heaven comes from. This is from my Plain Truth blog I wrote about a while ago. Again, there are realms on realms on realms. And just as there are 7 colors in the rainbow and 7 tones in the musical scale, each with a different vibratory note, there are 7 planes of existence on the spectrum of creation. The slowest speed of vibration occurs on the physical plane, the highest on the Buddhic plane. Now, this is why all of us that are waking up, our consciousness, we're operating on a faster, higher vibrational frequency. These frequencies that we're operating now, and really important for you to really go inward and meditate and pray and find out what this all means to you, is because operating on these higher vibrational planes allows us to ascend to the next level, which operates on higher frequencies. Okay? So this is the lowest frequency on. From the Buddhic plane, energy returns to its source, the Tao. Just as there are 7 colors in the rainbow on the musical scale, 7 planes of existence. The slowest of vibration, physical planes I just read, the densest of the 7 planes. Then we have the astral plane of creation. Then we have the causal plane of creation. It's the intellectual energy. It's Michael's plane of existence. Then we have the Akashic plane. You've heard of the Akashic record. Everything that ever was and will be is recorded and known if you have your intuition. Rudolf Steiner talked about the future of mankind at this exact time, leaving his five senses, not leaving, but not focusing on the five senses, look, touch, taste, feel, hear, and smell, to the higher, what he called the super senses, intellectualism, inspiration, intuition, creativity, and wisdom. It's really important why we get this right, because we're seeding the Akashic record so that in the future, our children and children's children, when they become more intuits, as they develop their higher conscious, which they will, the stuff we're doing today, the information we're disclosing, the light we're shining, okay, that will allow them to access those records that we are presenting. That's another reason why the work we're doing is so very important. So the central neutral plane of creation that interconnects the other six, the distilled knowledge of the universe, is recorded there. This is the records generator of everything that happens in the universe as it occurs. The records show events exactly as they are experienced, so the information then begins raw and is not clarified, understood, and assimilated until a consciousness takes responsibility for doing so. Once it's fully assimilated, it's stored on the Akashic plane. Then we have the mental plane, the fifth plane of creation. It's the medium as abstract intellectual energy, emphasizing truth. The infinite soul who incarnated as Lao-Tzu taught from this plane. Messianic sixth plane is the medium of the abstract emotional energy, emphasizing L-O-V-E, love. The infinite soul who incarnated as Jesus taught from this plane. And then we have the Buddhic plane, the highest plane of creation. It's the medium is pure or abstract kinetic energy. We experience the Buddhic plane just before fully refocusing our awareness on the Tao. The infinite soul who incarnated as Buddha taught us from this plane. And just so you know, the Tao and the Buddha, they all came here to prep the world for the Christ event. It's all part of a much, 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 much greater story that very few of us get taught or learn about unless we expand our spiritual teachings over our religious beliefs, or B-E-L-I-E-F, belief. Our universe is based part on the law of seven. It permeates the Michael teachings and many other teachings, as well as being applicable to the scales, rainbows, and so forth. Seven consists of two sets of three connected by one. 12 is also a significant number as it relates to 7. Apparently, other universes are based on different mathematical ideas. So I'll put this in the show notes. You can get into the whole deeper meanings of why we're here, what the planes of existence are. But this is another more information of who we are, why we're here, where we came from, and a much, much deeper story of not only what the shape of the earth is, but what are the other realms and the domes and the energy fields? Because we are energy beings having a physical experience, it is time we start focusing on the life force, or what's known as subtle energy. And in closing, the as above, so below. So a human placenta and the tree of life, the similarities are profound. And here we get into the energy fields of the earth. Did you know that the earth has a magnetic core at the North Pole? Magnetism. It attracts and it pulls the energy down through the earth, expanding it out. So magnets expand and contract. They repel and push. So when the pulling action, the attraction principle, the black negative pulls down through the North Pole, it creates the Antarctic Circle and shows that the earth is creating. Always in creation mode. So you can see here on this flat plane going across, we have the galactic core, we have the toroidal magnetic field, and then the superwave cosmetic ray electrons, which are all interacting on the cosmic plane. But it's based on magnetism, the laws of attraction and repulsion. You may have seen this movie out probably about 6 years ago called Thrive, with Foster Gamble of the family Procter & Gamble, with all the big money behind it. He's trying to help the world understand. But look at the model they're using, folks. It's a toroidal magnetic field with the flat earth plane in it. They're telling you and showing you that this is our plane, our realm of existence. We're on a flat earth plane of a toroidal field of energy, subtle magnetic energy, magnetricity. It's not electricity. Electricity is just energy transferred. Magnetricity is the ether. It's everywhere. And here you see the Polaris star above, the physical plane, and then the magnetospheres down below and as above. As above, so below. And then you can also see the fields of existence of the toroidal planes. The North Pole is the anode, the negative, and the South Pole is the pushing out, spelled it wrong, of fractal pushing out. We can see it in so many examples today. You can see it in vortex water. You can see it in tornadoes. Life is not created through explosion. The Big Bang Theory is the exact opposite. Whatever explodes and creates anything but particulate matter? Nothing. What does implosion create? Power. This is why rivers meander and they start off wide and get narrower. They're creating power. Implosion, not explosion. This is what we've got to come and start understanding, a much greater understanding. And in these toroidal fields, there also exist in ourselves. The heart is more powerful than the brain. It's 100,000 times stronger electrically and up to 5,000 times stronger magnetically than the brain. Open your heart, you open the world to all the possibilities. As I wanted to show you here, the human brains have tiny bits of magnets, we're finding out. Why does remote healing work with putting magnets on somebody? You can help somebody in a distant lands. Because we're all connected through magnetricity. Here's the first map of magnetic mineral magnetite in the human brain. Turns out that our brain may be full of magnetites. We're all connected. And so, I want to show you this one first here. So this is how a speaker works with magnets. You've got a centralized magnets with norths on each side and a south center pole here at the bottom pushing out. All right. So you've got the magnets, the north at the center and the south around the perimeter of a magnet. Okay. These are speakers in your car. These are speakers in your home. This is how it works. Well, how beautifully symbolic that the earth is one big speaker and it's made to amplify. What we do here amplifies throughout the universe. So folks, open up your hearts, show your love through these difficult times. Don't give in to the darkness because we are light and we are here to create a much better world for the future of all. Tag, you're it. Thanks for listening. Sorry I went on for a while. I thought the information was important. And a huge, huge shout out to the amazing work of Martin Kenny, a student of syncretism who's bringing a bunch of wonderful, much needed synchronicity, synthesizing the worlds and all the knowledge we have into a cohesive, unified field of knowledge. Thank you, Mr. Kenny. Haven't talked to you in a while, my friend, so let's reconnect again. But this was done in honor of you. Peace, love one another always. I'm out.